Is Rati Sinha. She has a master's from University of Sydney and a PhD from UNSW. Her PhD was supported by 2 scholarships, APA and tuition fee waiver. She's worked in the industry in area of roles ranging from technical support, applications, and account management. So yeah, I'll just hand it over to Rati from now. So she'll be talking for 20 minutes, and then we can have 10-minute session for Q&A, and then we'll move on to our next speaker. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay,
let me just share my screen. Share. Sorry, give me 1 sec. Yeah, just share it again. Great, I can start now. Thank you, Shweta, and thank you everyone at Ingam. I'm very honored to have the opportunity to speak here. So I'll start with first a disclaimer. Everything I say here is in personal capacity. It is not in professional capacity. So I'm essentially representing myself here, not QIAGEN today. So with that, I thought I'll share a little bit of my qualifications and my journey. I'm sure what you'll find is a lot of us have exactly the same backgrounds. So I've done my bachelor's in biotechnology, and then a master's in applied sciences, a master's in science management, and then I went on to do a PhD with an APAI, Australian Postgraduate Research Award, and a tuition fee waiver scholarship from UNSW. I completed it in 2014. And then after that is when I decided that I wanted to shift to the industry. Now, that's also, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. It's also because during my PhD, I was managing all the ordering for the lab. So all of the account managers and sales reps used to come and see me during my PhD time. And I think that's when I got exposure to the other side, to the industrial side of science. And that's when I thought, I think I'm really going to enjoy the other side. And so after my PhD, I switched. The toughest bit in the journey is your first step into the industry. It's a bit of a catch-22 situation because, industry says, you're a fresher, you don't have experience. How can you get experience if nobody's going to give you work, right? It's a bit of a catch-22. And that was exactly my experience when I was trying to shift. So it's always finding that first role, which is going to be difficult. After you have your first role, it's smooth sail. So for me, my first role was a technical support specialist. Now, in my next few slides, I'll go into these roles in a little bit in detail, telling you what they're about and what work you do in them, and then we can go on to the CV. So I was a technical support specialist with Agilent Enzyme Research. And then I went on to be a sales and application specialist with CG. So that's more in the diagnostic side. And then I shifted on to account management, where essentially I was looking after the whole commercial business of QIAGEN for life sciences initially, and now diagnostic. So I'll go on to my next slide where I'll just touch briefly on the different industry pathways that you can take after a research career. So there are different roles that are available in the industry. You've got to think about what you want to do, where your key strengths are, essentially. So let's say a technical support specialist. A technical support specialist is generally a desk-based job. So for me, it was, where you would receive 60 emails a day, essentially, asking you technical questions. you have access to all the manuals. So you're studying up the manuals, trying to answer those questions. If you don't know the answer, you're escalating it to second level support or first level support. You're getting raw files, you're getting technical files to troubleshoot and to figure out what's wrong. So that's a technical support specialist, where it's a desk-based job. Again, it depends from company to company. You can have different designations and different titles. Then you can have a field application specialist or an engineer role. These can be pre-sale, post-sale. So a field application specialist can be a pre-sale role where you are assisting in demos. You're assisting in an evaluation of an instrument or a product, or it can be a post-sales role where after the instrument has been, you're doing the installation after sale, you're doing training after sale. So, and then an engineer is essentially somebody doing your PMs, preventative maintenance. Something's broken down, the engineer goes in. So it's the field application specialist is generally a field-based role where you're going out. You could have a product specialist. A product specialist is generally looking after just one product. So, product specialist just for CG, product specialist just for something. It may not be a very general role. Then you have account management, which is what I do and what I love to do. As an account manager, you're essentially the CEO of your own little territory. Everything that happens in your territory is your responsibility. You are accountable for every single thing that's happening in your territory. So, for example, an invoice is lost. That's your responsibility. If an evaluation is happening, that's your responsibility. If there's a technical inquiry, that's your responsibility. If you're trying to, if there's a new product in the market that you want your customers to know about, that's your responsibility. So as an account manager, you are working with different internal and external stakeholders. Internal stakeholders are people and departments within your organization. So for me, it would be my supply chain people, the engineering department, the applications department. So yeah, I'd be working with all of them and my customers all on a daily basis. Then marketing. There are a lot of people that like to go for marketing roles. It's more on campaigning. If there's something new coming out, you're looking after that. A medical science liaison, that's another thing that people like to go for after PhDs. A medical science liaison it's not a commercial, it's not a sales sort of role, it's more a technical role. So you're having technical discussions with, say, doctors and surgeons, but it'll be more on, you're not trying to push the sale, you're trying to have more of a technical conversation. So I think now for a lot of these roles, some of them would be more susceptible to an entry role, to an entry into the industry. So I think a technical support or a field application specialist would probably be, if you don't have any sales background, they'll probably be the roles to start, to enter and start, and then shift on. In time, career hierarchy would be a national role probably, or like a senior management role, like, the head of something. So when you're choosing these roles of shifting to the industry, I think it's very important for you to have these considerations in mind before you select your role. Your job description. For example, are you a people's person? Do you truly enjoy talking to people? If you really enjoy talking to people, then a customer-facing role is something you would like. Do you like working with instrumentation? If yes, then something like a field applications role you would love, because you'll be doing the role day in and day out. So you have to enjoy what you're doing. Other factors like desk-based, field-based, travel component. Do you want a national role? I have my twins are 5 years. So for me, a national role is a no-no. So just simple practical things as well that you have to think about. Work-life balance. Are you able to do a call at 10 a.m., at 10 p.m.? Is that expected? Can you do it? Career progression. What is the next step you can take? What is the next step you will take after this role? So just questions like that. Do you get along with your hiring manager? What is the culture like at that organization? I think these things are very important. Yes, money, of course, but I've put it right down because there are other factors that are just as important. And so with that, I'm coming to the industry-oriented resume. Now, this is something that I was told when I went for my first interview. They said, you've got a PhD. So I'm not worried about your technical side. If you've got a PhD, you will manage the technical side. And you'll find a lot of companies and a lot of organizations in the head when they see your PhD, they know you're good technically. They know you've got the academic expertise to be able to deliver on the technical side. So what do they want to see on your resume? They want to see business acumen. Do you have business acumen along with technical skills? That's what they want to see. That is what you have to demonstrate in your resume. So yes, you've got all those papers, and that's great. My resume now looks very different to what it did during my PhD days. My PhD days, it had all of my papers, and then gradually now, if you see my LinkedIn, they're right at the bottom, because what the industry looks for is very different to what the research side looks for. So now for the industry, they want you to demonstrate business acumen. They want you to demonstrate customer-facing skills. So have you done, and in my next 2-3 slides, we'll go down, into it in a little bit more detail. But customer-facing skills. Have you done anything where you can demonstrate customer-facing skills? It doesn't have to even be in the biotechnology industry. For me, I worked at Citibank in a little kiosk during my student days. And so I put that experience there because it demonstrated that I can talk to customers. I'm a people's person. I can talk to people, and I enjoy doing that. And that point got across in my resume 8 years ago. So if you have any commercial sales experience, I had a friend who worked in a shoe shop. She put it there because, again, you're demonstrating you've also got some sales experience. Do you have a basic understanding of commercial concepts? Do you know what is forecasting? Do you understand how budgets work? Simple things like that. So try and think of these points and put it in your resume. Okay, can you demonstrate working with multiple internal and external stakeholders? Internal stakeholders. So in your organization, there must be different departments. Do you work with them? Have you been able to work with them? Can you demonstrate that? Do you have any experience with any sort of a management database? Okay, any sort of customer relationship database, any sort of database. Again, put it out there. Do you have any experience with generating a quote? Do you know what is written on a quote? What is important to be on a quote? Do you know how to use any sort of software like Salesforce or anything like that? These are the kind of things they want to see on your resume. Okay, they want to see, are you a team player? Can you work as part of a team for the betterment of your team and your company, and not just for yourself? So essentially, now I'll hone down. Okay, how can we demonstrate business acumen? So this is what I did when I was applying for my university, when I was applying for my first industry role. As I said, I used to manage all the ordering for my lab, and I used to meet all the account managers and sales reps. And so I put it there. So list all the duties in your resume that you have been doing in your lab. You might think, oh, I do some ordering, but that's showing that you can take responsibility, that you are able to network. And these are things that are important. So, in your career at the moment, do you do any ordering? Do you do any admin work in your lab? So for me, I used to do invoice reconciliations as well. And I used to work with UNSW Finance. Are you able to, do you do something like that? That will show that you have experience working with internal and external stakeholders. Your internal stakeholders would be people within your organization. Your external stakeholders will be, could be, so for you, an external stakeholder would be somebody like me, if you're contacting me. These are, you're trying to show on your resume, you're not just somebody who can do a scientific experiment. You are somebody much more than that, who can do other things as well. Multifaceted, multitasking. So in your resume, you've got to show how can you add value to the organization, to your potential organization. What do you bring to the table? Why should they hire you? Again, from the, so, and this is all taking into, we are just, your technical, your PhD sort of accounts for, you're very good technically in what you're doing. I'm not saying you don't put it there. Of course, you're going to say, I'm a PhD in this. But in your achievements, in what do you do in the lab, apart from just saying, I do PCR, I do, next generation sequencing, I do bioinformatics. Yes, write those things in a line, but also write other things. Also write things like, I am in touch with, I'm in touch with industry people, let's say account managers, technical experts. I'm good at networking. By that, you're trying to show, I understand how the industry works. I understand what is required of me in that role. Also say things like, so when you're working at university, it means you're on the other side of the table. You understand how the university works. You understand, the pain points at universities. You understand timelines. You understand how funding at universities work. You understand how hierarchy at university works. So this information and knowledge and understanding that you have is not something that somebody else might have. So it's an advantage that you have because you've been, because you've been at the university. So these are things that you also put down. You highlight whatever you can bring to the table. If let's say you have an example of running budgets for the university, or like in my lab, I knew what the budgets were. So things like that, you can write that. You can say, I have a deep understanding. So therefore, I will be able to manage budgets in my new role if there are any budgets there. But I also have an understanding of what, say, the research sector looks like, how it works, how it runs. So you've got to highlight those things. You've got to highlight everything that's, that you think is, oh, this is obvious. You've got to highlight those things. Okay, if you're like Shweta has organized this event, that's organizational skill. So, write that down. I've been organizing these events. Okay, again, in your organization, you've also got existing relationships with researchers. They're your friends. So let's say when I started, I didn't know anybody. I had to form those friendships right from scratch, but you already have those friendships. That's an advantage. Things like that need to be on your resume. So you have to have a deep think about what is it that you have that somebody else might not have, and put it all there in your resume. So essentially, the important thing is you take off your technical cap, you put on a commercial cap. You've got to think from a very commercial point of view. You've got to think from, in the industry, what is important. Networking is important. Your relationships are important. The fact that you've met a lot of people, you're confident speaking in front of crowds. That's an advantage. Put it there, right? I am confident in giving seminars. I'm confident, in one-to-ones with people. That's a skill that somebody else might not have, and then on my database point. So when I was during my PhD, during my UNSW days, I used to look after a database as well. It was an instrument database, I think. So it's important to put things like that there, because what that shows to your potential employer is, I know I'm responsible for a database. I know how to update it regularly. right? And by that, the implication is that you'll be able to manage, let's say, a customer relationship database, and you understand that it needs to be updated regularly, right? So a lot of things that you're writing in your, that's my last slide. So a lot of things that you're writing in your resume will imply other things. It will form your overall impression, essentially, right? And I think the important thing is, remember, when you've come from Ingham Institute, everybody knows you're technically good. You have a PhD, nobody's going to ask you technical questions. I literally got told that. They said to me, you've got a PhD. We're not going to ask you technical questions. In my first interview, I had a 45-minute interview. There was no technical question. The questions were all, you know, what would you do in this situation? What would you do? How would you react to this? You know, those are the kind of questions that came my way. So remember in your resume, that PhD will get you through on the technical side. You have to show you've got to show your overall personality. You've got to show all the other things that you are able to do, essentially, on that resume. I think that brings me to the end. I hope I've not gone over. Shweta, back to you.
Thank you so much, Rati. Yep, we are open for 10 minutes Q&A if anyone wants to go for a question. You can just directly ask the question, or you can type in the chat.
Hi, Rati, wonderful presentation. And especially for youngsters, I wish there would be some presentations like this when I just did my PhD. Anyway, but it was very good. Just out of curiosity,
Yes.
Are there any targets given in the industry,
Yes.
And how stressful it could be?
Okay. So again, it depends on from role to role. So so if you're going for a sales role, or let's say sales rep or account management, there are targets. I think it depends on what, like for me, it's very important to represent a product that you believe in, because it's easier to sell. The stress levels, it depends. There is definitely stress. There are no two ways to it. I think it depends on how you manage the stress. Like for me now, I enjoy the targets. Like there's a thrill. I don't think I could not work in sales, because I love having that target and chasing it. Every day in the morning, I'm looking at where I'm at. So I think it depends. But there are lots of people who find, who might not like it as much. So you've got to try it to know if you can deal with it. It's fun, but yes, of course it comes with its level of stress as well. It's about how you deal with it, how you manage it. You have some roles, like I know that at QIAGEN in our field and applications, we don't have targets. So it depends, right? If you don't want a commercial role, if you just want a technical role, then maybe an engineer's role. Engineer's role won't have targets, or maybe an applications role. But again, that varies from company to company. In some companies, you might have an applications role which has targets. It depends. I think different companies are, they work differently. But there will definitely be roles in the industry that don't have targets. So tech support will not have.
I mean, it depends what kind of targets. I was more curious about the financial targets, and I think that would be in the sales role probably. Yeah. But otherwise, even in research, we do make targets, our own objectives, yes. And that's always there. Yeah, thank you. And I just leave somebody at the other question about your salary in research versus that for someone else. I'm sure somebody will ask that. Thank you.
I think massive difference. Let's say there's a massive difference. The industry looks after you well, for sure. Like for me, I could never go back. I love working in the industry. And
that says all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're encouraging everyone to leave research now, Rati. Come on.
No,
how's your QIAGEN going to work?
Then there won't be any jobs for them. Then they can't do that.
I'm just telling you that I love what I do, and I think, and that's why it's important to pick a place, the culture of whatever company you're going to. always find out, first about the culture of the company. That's really important. You have some companies where like you don't know. You've got to first figure out if you can fit in. That's really important. Somebody's put in a
Yeah,
question.
Rati, we have a question. It says, do you have any advice? So it's from Cherry. She says, do you have any advice for someone who has overseas experience and finds it's really hard to break into the Australian market?
You know what? So I think whether you have overseas experience or if you have research experience here, like when I finished my PhD, I got a rude shock because I would send my resume and literally the same day get a rejection. And then everybody was like, well, you don't have any industry experience. So my PhD was worth zilch. Rude shock, right? Because I'm here, I finished my PhD. It's like the biggest achievement in my life.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, you don't have any sales experience. This is, and which is why I think you have to get into those technical roles first, get some experience, and then shift into something more commercial. So which is why for me, it was a maternity leave for 10 months. But I've never looked back since then. But getting that first role was very hard. Like when you apply initially and you get responses saying you don't have industry experience, just let it slide like water on a duck's back. You've got to be thick-skinned and just keep applying and find your first break. After you get your first break, it's such a smooth sail. But your first break, that's where you've got to, So I have friends who started out. So either you can start from like an entry-level sales role, which a lot of people won't want to do because that's taking a step down after a PhD. But then that's one way get in. The other way is, do something like field service or field applications where you're talking to customers, you're going out there, so you can demonstrate you've got, you've got that experience, and then switch to something more commercial. But yeah, there's no easy way for penetration into the industry. There'll be a phase of frustration that I think we've all gone through that you have to get through to get into. And then when you look back, you're like, oh yes, that did happen years ago.
Yeah. Okay, so we have another question. Thanks for the presentation. I joined late, sorry for that. Do we need to mention all details of our research experience in our industry customized CV? That's from Mohammed.
So I think it depends on you. You obviously want to mention, the name of your project, but you don't have to go in detail as in, like if I was applying for a research role, I would say, I know how to do NGS. I have done library prep on my own. I know how to do bioinformatics. I know how to use CLC genomics, and like I would mention all of that. In an industry CV, it doesn't matter if you know how to use CLC genomics. It doesn't matter if you can do NGS. I can mention all of these in one line. I am adept at skills of next generation sequencing and bioinformatics. Then when you're having your interview, you can talk more about it then. But you don't want them to see your resume, not find anything commercial, and put it aside. So your resume, again, remove your technical cap, put on your commercial cap. You've got to talk about everything that's commercial in an industry review. They know you're good already. So keep that in mind when you're writing it.
So Rati, can I ask you, when you say this, so it depends what sort of role you're applying, because for some roles, maybe your publications are important for them to see whether you can write properly. Maybe you need to focus on those ones.
Yes. If you're, again, it depends on the kind of role. So if you're in your field, if you're doing a field service, then you have to absolutely mention, what sort of research. But you also have to mention the other things. You also have to mention your customer service. What they want to see, if you're a field service person, right? A normal day in your life is going to be, you're going to wake up in the morning, drive to an organization and either do a training there or a demonstration there. So you need to be able to talk to multiple customers on a day-to-day basis. So you've got to be comfortable picking up the phone and calling somebody you don't know. You've got to be comfortable going and presenting to 7 different people who you've never met before, right? So they also want to see that you can handle that situation. They know you can handle the technical side. You've got the PhD. They want to see, are you confident? Can you go and train 7 people?
Right. Well, I don't see any more questions.
I guess you can include, if you have trained somebody in your organization, students, research assistants. So I think that experience will really add.
Rati, we have another question from Cherry. She says, which transferable skills would you suggest need to reflect in one's CV and how do we quantify them?
Which skills? Okay. So like you organized this, right? It shows leadership.
Wow.
When you organize this, it shows leadership. It shows organizational skills, right? So something like this, put it out there. If you're managing a database or something in your life, if you're managing, funds, or you have an idea of in your lab how you've been given these 4 project codes and you're managing those, things like that. Things like that that shows that you can manage some sort of a budget. It shows that you have an idea of how finance also works. So things like that. You've obviously got to think what you've been doing in the lab and how that would be transferable, but things like that, essentially. Simple things that we take for granted, that we think, oh my God, who writes this on a resume? Things like that. That'll matter.
Well, thank you so much, Rati. And if we have any more questions, we can probably pop them at the end when we have Kisle's presentation.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I am very honored to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we have a second speaker for today. He's Kisle. His name is Kisle Roy. He's a technical sales specialist with 4 years of experience. And he's supported with a doctorate degree and a 5 years postdoc experience. So I think he's very apt for us because he's been as a postdoc researcher and now he's in industry for 4 years. So yeah, we can have your talk now, Kisle.
Sure, I'll just share my screen. Sure. Thank you.
Your voice is dropping, Kisle.
Yep. Hi, Nirupama. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you better. Thank you.
And can you see my screen as well?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. So yeah, thanks, Rati, for that wonderful talk. I think you've pretty much covered most of the stuff that I wanted to say as well. But regardless, I'll just talk about how to present an industry CV and see how it's able to help you through my journey as well, just like and basically I started off doing basic biotechnology, moved over to be a fellow again in India and did I was given a scholarship to go abroad and do a research project into antivirals, plant-based herbal antivirals testing on HIV, and came back worked as SkyShares in Bangalore. Went came overseas to straight to finish my PhD, but in between I was given the offer for a postdoctoral position at Deakin in the same lab. Did that role for nearly 2.5 or almost 3 years, and then that funding kind of dried up. So yeah, I moved to I started applying for other postdoctoral positions. This one in particular kind of really attracted me, so went to pursue postdoc in brain metastatic melanomas in University of Bergen, Norway. I was working under a clinician at Auckland Hospital, where I would sit with the surgeons in the operation theater. They would extract the melanoma tissue from the patient's brain in the surgical theaters. I would take the tissue, carry them over to the lab, establish cell lines. We had some drugs and some agents that we were testing them on. Um, soon as I got Alfred D. Scholarship, came back to Australia, and again, I didn't see, again, the funding was kind of drying up. I didn't have much support or much success with alternative grants. Again, travel overseas because I got another postdoc position at Singapore. In Singapore, I Research Institute, but that was again overseas. So this is like, it seemed like I was a ping pong ball bouncing from here and there. Although this is exciting, I was really, really, into research, and but then there was no stability. And of course, look, I was married. I was thinking of starting a family, owning a house, all those dreams. So I started looking at alternatives, and the first job that I applied down, uh, you know, like Rati mentioned, this was a step down. So I moved as a life science technical sales support specialist to in
Sorry,
vitro
Kisley,
technologies. Step down in both in terms of position and salary.
Kisley, your voice is breaking. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can, but it's breaking a lot. I mean,
Yeah, within a. Yep. Is this okay? Can you hear me now?
no, it's still breaking a lot, Kisley. Do
Oh.
you want to log in again? I mean, do you want to join again?
Yeah.
If you
Bear with me. I'll just try and join again now.
sure, yeah.
I think it's better if you just turn off the
Yeah.
camera. Maybe we can give that a go.
Frozen, right? Yeah.
I'll do that. Yep. Is this better? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can, Kisley.
Yeah, it's better because let's
perfect.
keep the video.
So yeah, I was just saying that I moved to industry in 2018 as my first role at In Vitro Technologies as a life science sales support, technical sales support specialist, where I got this offer obviously because of my technical background and the fact that I was able to demonstrate what Rati mentioned clearly is that I worked with different number of people in different labs, PhDs, postdocs, visitors, industrial partners, and I was able to not only communicate well but also kind of train them technically. So I was apart from the fact that I was technically able to perform the duties, I was also able to communicate well and present well. It also, I think, factored in that I was able to plan things, coordinate things. So all of these factors also played an important role in me getting that role. And then again, at In Vitro Technologies, I've held numerous roles like technical. So I was made a team leader for the technical sales specialist team, which is a team of 4 people, and then moved on to be the e-procurement manager. The company saw the kind of value that I brought to the company in terms of sales and management. So they kind of moved me over to field sales into New South Wales in 2019, and did that role for 3 years, and then moved on as a technical sales specialist in Sartorius for ANZ, where I'm presently, situated. So coming on to how to create an industry-ready CV. Well, firstly, of course, we need a presentable template. The content of your CV is really important. And for every single job that you're applying for. But the most important factor is you need to question yourself how much of, like, in terms of percentage, how well does it align with your portfolio. The job has to align nearly, I would say, 80 to 90% for you to have a really good, honest about to yourself. Secondly, obviously, it's very important to have a strong and first to, in order to get that CV to be strong and effective, you have to think about the different kind of organizations that you want to apply for, which match or which align with your with your um, with your skill set or with your experience. And then you need to organize everything and put it together in the CV. And then obviously do look at CVs samples from other people. It helps a lot. Skills, your experience, and your education, that matters a lot. And of course, you need to highlight a few traits that your employers or potential employers are actually seeking out for. So you need to identify that in the specific job advert that you're looking at, right? So obviously, beginning in terms, to be honest, first and foremost, the CV is usually screened by HR. So HRs basically don't kind of they're not technically, so what they are looking for is certain
Sorry, Kisle, we missed the what you
keywords
mentioned.
in that job advert which align your CV. Yeah. So what I was saying is, usually when you apply for a particular job, your CV, when you post it by a job website, it usually goes to the HR, and HR finally shortlists some CVs and then sends it to the hiring person, who will kind of go ahead with the interviews. So your CV must have the keywords that's necessary for you to be shortlisted for a particular job. So obviously it has to be short and precise. From what I have known and from the personal experience that I have gained, usually people don't even read the cover letter. So I do know that they often ask, really presented well in your CV, nobody is gonna. Very important is a summary statement. So a lot of times companies don't hire people because they have technical capabilities, because everybody, just like us, there are many people out there who have the similar kind of technical capabilities. But what companies look for is a person who will have similar kind of mindset, who will have kind of ability to fit in well with the company's mindset. So it's very important that you have to reflects in your CV, and about it's a really short, like an objective or an intent, that what do you want to achieve overall. So that gives the company or the screening people an idea about your personality. It's actually what they're looking for. Because believe me, just like yourself, there'll be many other applicants technically equally or even more competent. But what should fit in right is your aptitude, it's your attitude, it's your nature, right? And the willingness.
Sorry, Kisle, can I just
Yeah.
interrupt? Can you just go through that slide again? Because there were that's very important slide, and we lost you a lot during the beginning thing and the summary statement.
Oh, so sorry. Yeah. So with the summary statement, what I was saying is, it's really important for people to kind of understand what sort of personality you have, what's your objective overall. And, a lot of times people are not just hiring for technical competency, because, that's going to be there, obviously. That's the obvious factor. But what they're actually looking for is the kind of person you are, whether you will fit in with the rest of the company or not, whether you're the right person for the job or not. So summary statement, objectives is also carrying some weightage. So definitely, do include these features in your CV. And finally, coming to one of the most important part of the CV, which is the core expertise or the skill set, right? Like I mentioned, like your CV first is scanned for specific keywords, right? And if those keywords are not there, believe me, your CV will not be looked at for the future, So you need to read the job advert very, very clearly and address the fact that you've got those skill set and expertise, the required expertise, right? So skills, as Rati mentioned, it's not just the fact that you're technically competent. That's your core strength. The skills would be planning, would be observation, accuracy or thinking, or even leadership or interpersonal skills, presentation, right? Sometimes it's really, really important that you stress on these, not just in bullet points. I mean, sometimes bullet points, but if you can highlight these are actually part of achievement. If you've held seminars, webinars, if you've hosted events, these are parts that you need to, these are things that you need to highlight in your CV really, really openly. So you practically need to let the employers know what you're capable of apart from being technically competent, because your core strengths obviously going to be there. You've got that PhD degree, you've got that research experience in the lab. So obviously with the strengths, you need to categorize your strengths, right? And that category must be precisely apt to the specific job advert that you've applied for. So, there's different technical, like say it's a field application specialist role, right? And the company offers, or you need to go to the company website and see what sort of equipment they sell. So obviously the field application specialist role would be for a particular pieces of equipment, but then the company might have several other range of equipment too. So you do need to address that your strong area is definitely there for the kind of equipment that the company is going to look or hire you for. But then you're also capable so sorry you're also capable of performing applications or trainings for these other set of equipment if needed, because you have that background, right? So you need to showcase that as well. Sometimes it's important to show that you won awards during presentations and all that. So uh, if you've given presentations, oral or even poster presentations, and you've been acknowledged for that, do present that. That's also important. And it's very, very important to highlight your accomplishments and achievements, right? But I'm guessing most of the research people, just like myself, they don't have that necessary industrial experience, right? So in order to break into the industry, like what you need to mention is, how are you industry ready? So what have you done to be industry ready? Like these include, you know, something like leadership skills, time management, planning, attention to detail, whether you've done some certification, whether you've done some internship, whether you have kind of partnered with industries in the past for a research project, whether you've done trade displays, trainings, you know, and how are you able to achieve or show those accomplishments is really, really important. Of course, your research experience also matters. So do put that in. Be very precise about this. It's very, very subjective to the kind of role that you're applying for. Not every job that you applied for requires the showcase of your publications. It is important, but depends on the kind of role that you've applied for. So when I did apply for my technical sales specialist role, I had like 35 or 40 publications. I didn't showcase any of them, not even one. The point was I needed to prove them that I am technically competent, not through publications, because that's going to be there. I've given them my LinkedIn profile. If they want to look me up, they will, which most likely every employer does. So they will look you up and they will find things about you. But in the CV, you've got to make it as industry focused as possible, as specifically focused to the particular job that you've applied for. So they need to see that you're really, really interested and the right person for this particular job, and not distracted by other features that are highlighting in your. So often industry people go back to academia because they felt this job is not the right one for them. So that's what is really, really important, that firstly you need to be really sure whether you're willing to try this. Of course, often things may not suit well and you've got your valid reasons to go back, but nevertheless you need to be open minded. You need to be willingness. You need to show the willingness to absolutely trial the particular job, right? So the company or your hiring manager needs to kind of see that, not just in your CV, but also when they're talking to you. So things need to reflect very clearly. Your intention needs to show apart from your skills, right? They need to see that you are industry ready. So apart from the fact that you're presenting this on your CV, do bring it out in your personality too. Education is really important. I mean, there are things that you need to mention, things that you don't need to mention. And, it's really, really important that you include the information in a very easy to read manner. Whatever you include on your CV, it must be very, very easy to read. So don't mention unnecessary details that's not needed, just the relevant information, right? And of course, very, very important to showcase that you have a good list of referees, at least 2 to 3 referees who can vouch for you. So that's very important. That shows that you've got faith in people, that people trust you with your work, and that people are ready to vouch for you. So that shows your hiring manager or even the HR the confidence that this person has got, right? So that is important. And I guess that was my last slide. Sorry, guys. So any questions?
Thank you, Kisle. Yep, we'll wait for the questions. Sorry, there were a lot of breakups, but yeah, finally it went okay. We could hear
Oh,
you.
so sorry about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it went okay.
Kisle, I had one question. So while we're waiting for others, so
Yeah.
do you think, would you suggest having someone, a known referee or a reference in the industry would be an easier thing to step in rather than just send out your resume and it just goes in the pipeline?
Of course it matters. Look, if a known person recommends you for a particular job, you don't go through the HR, you directly go to the hiring manager, right? So of course your CV needs to reflect that too, because the person who's recommending you recommends you with a particular trust, so obviously they know you. So your CV definitely is not screened through primarily by an HR. It just directly is passed on to the hiring manager because you've come via a recommendation. So that does happen, and it's not very often, but it does happen. So if somebody is able to recommend you for a particular position, why not?
Right.
So, Kisla, in your experience, is it the difference in industry and academia? Because in academia, when we recruit, normally HR sends all the applications to us. And then we are there to shortlist and tell HR, okay, we want to interview these people. HR will definitely overlook at that we are not excluding somebody if they have similar thing and one person is selected and for interview and not other one. But in industry, is it the normal practice that HR will do the first screening?
Usually they are given guidelines to align the CVs which are matching the job description. So in case the CV doesn't reflect the keywords, like I mentioned, which are matching the job description, then they won't put forward those CVs.
Okay. All right.
Kisle, we have two questions. First one is from Mohammed. He says, would you please give us some sample of active voice verb measurable that we need to use in describing of our experience?
Absolutely, absolutely. So in terms of describing your experience, it's really, really important that you highlight every single achievement, not just technical achievement or publication achievement, right? In terms of research experience, that's definitely there. But what you need to highlight for industry is whether you've actually participated in, say, some sort of trainings, you've had interactions with industry people, you've actually been a, like, whether you've organized things, whether you've planned events, whether you've communicated or trained people, right? So it's really, really important to bring that feature in mind for the hiring bodies, to let them know that you have the capability of planning, you are well versed in training people and so on.
Thanks, Kisle. We have another one from Farhana. She's asking, where can you find a good template for industry CV from? If someone has no contacts to ask, it would be good to have a starting point.
Well, to be honest, a lot of times there's certain, you can obviously look up the web, right? That's definitely something where you can feel free to reach out, and there's agencies that supply professionally kind of catered uh, uh, you know um, templates, but there's also these third party or the agencies which present your CV to a particular kind of employer, right? And they are able to help you out with your CV too. They kind of help you out presenting yourself in a better way. So do feel free to reach out to these agencies which kind of help out people getting jobs. So yeah, that's another way of doing that.
Right. Thanks, Kisle. Another one from Ved Libao says, should we list several selected publications which are relevant to the job descriptions?
Yep. Look, it all, again depends on the job that you've applied for. If it's a field application specialist job, yes, you do need to showcase that you've published some literature, that you've actually physically used the instrument, and you know the technical aspect of the instrument. So definitely some publications are of use there. But if you're applying for a sales job, I don't believe you should be showing any publications. Rather, what you should be focusing on is your nature, your behavior, and also the fact that you're presentable and you've spoken to n number of people, organized such and such events, took part in this and that, and you've on your communication skills and so on.
Right. Thanks, Kisle. Well, I have another question, either Kisle or Rati, anyone can answer that one. So if you're applying for like different jobs, it's not just one particular job that we are looking into. I mean, like different jobs that Rati mentioned in the beginning. So, I mean, I assume that the CV would be different in case if we are applying for a technical specialist or a sales job. But then if it goes through the same HR, because if the company is same and you're applying for two different roles, wouldn't it look a bit, I don't know, I mean, like dubious that you have two different CVs from the same person applying for these roles?
I can take that. I think it is expected in the industry that you custom tailor.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry, what's happening?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You can see me? Yeah. Okay. I think in the industry, it's expected that you custom tailor your resume for every single job.
Right.
So I think it'll be appreciated by HR probably. So I don't think that's the default thing. When you apply for when you look at a position, you change your CV around. Absolutely. And that's I think that's standard practice essentially. So you're not going to be penalized for that.
Right. Thanks, Rati. Any more questions from anyone? I think, well, that's it then. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Rati and Kisle, especially for this presentation. And oh, finally, we can see you now.
Well, most of you know how I look, so it's okay.
No, but yeah, still, thank you so much.
Thanks, Shweta, and thank you everybody at Income. Very honored. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And yeah, I would just like to put up a slide for our next event. Can we? It's just, yep, it's just an annual postdoc research and focus event that we are planning in sometime in November. I'm not sure. Chamini, do you want to add something to this one?
I think I just wanted to inform everyone